The engineers wasted no time getting to work. What was expected to be a slow, grueling process of clearing rubble quickly turned into a streamlined operation. With the structure of the stairwell still intact beneath the collapsed debris, the team worked with efficiency, clearing large sections faster than anticipated. Clara and her elven guards remained stationed throughout the chamber, weapons at the ready, while Omega paced along the perimeter, sniffing the air, ever watchful. Though the underground space remained eerily quiet, no one let their guard down. Eli monitored the excavation with a critical eye, keeping track of structural stability readings while the engineers removed chunks of stone. Surprisingly intact for something this old, she muttered, adjusting the device in her hand. I expected a lot more foundational decay. Shade, standing beside Katrina, gave a low whistle as another massive slab was pulled away. Gotta say, I thought we'd be down here a hell of a lot longer. You and me both, Katrina replied, brushing a bit of dust from her sleeve. Not that I'm complaining. With each layer of debris they cleared, the way up became clearer. The smooth, ancient stone of the stairwell emerged, untouched by time. Whatever had caused the collapse had only buried it, rather than destroying it. Stairwell is intact, one of the engineers called to Gunnar. We're almost at the top. Gunnar gave a curt nod, glancing toward Eli. Anything we should be concerned about? Eli shook her head. So far, nothing abnormal. No energy fluctuations, no weird interference. Seems like a straightforward excavation. Rose, who had been observing from the side, leaned against the wall with a smirk. For once, something is actually going easy. Almost makes me nervous. Darren, who had been lingering nearby, scoffed. Yeah, don't say that too loud. You'll jinx it. Within another half hour, the engineers reached the top of the stairwell, clearing the last layer of debris, only to come to a halt. A thick, solid slab of stone lay over the exit, different from the surrounding rubble. Intricate runes faintly glowed across its surface, pulsing with magical energy. The engineers exchanged uncertain glances before stepping back, unwilling to touch it. One of them turned to Gunnar. Sir, we've got a problem. Eli was already stepping forward, pulling one of her scanning devices from her belt. She ran it slowly over the solid stone slab, watching the readings flicker across the small screen. Her eyebrows lifted slightly in surprise. Well, that's impressive, she murmured. These wards are old. Still active. Strength and protection based. She adjusted the settings, running a second pass with the scanner. Whoever put this here wanted it to stay. Gunnar crossed his arms. What are we dealing with? Eli frowned, shifting the device to another mode. From what I'm reading, this isn't just debris. We're looking at a 5-foot-thick section of solid wall that collapsed perfectly over the stairwell's exit. It didn't crumble, didn't break apart, it just fell. And the kicker? There's nothing above it. She glanced at the team. I'm not picking up any additional weight or structural stress above this section. It's almost like it was placed here deliberately. One of the engineers let out a low curse. So, what are you saying? This wasn't just a natural collapse. Eli gave a short shake of her head. Not a chance. The enchantments are too precise. This was designed to block access while still maintaining the structural integrity of the stairwell. Someone sealed this off on purpose. Shade exhaled sharply, eyeing the glowing runes along the surface. All right, so how do we move it? The engineers exchanged uneasy glances. We've tried brute force, but with these enchantments, we don't want to risk breaking something that could bring more of the structure down. Katrina tapped her fingers against her arm. That means it's Magic's turn. Rose, standing just behind Eli, folded her arms. Well, I guess it's my time to shine, huh? Let's see what kind of mess we're dealing with. She stepped forward, running her fingers lightly along the ancient runes, her eyes narrowing as she began her assessment. Rose and Eli wasted no time clearing the stairwell of unnecessary personnel. Out. All of you, Rose commanded, her tone leaving no room for argument. Gunnar gave a short nod, motioning for the engineers and soldiers to clear the space. Even Clara and the elven guards backed off. though their wary gazes lingered. The tension in the air was palpable. Once alone, Rose crouched beside Eli, both of them studying the glowing runes etched into the stone. Eli's scanners flickered as she carefully mapped out the magical energy still coursing through the ancient seals. "It's layered," Eli murmured, adjusting a dial on her device. "There are multiple overlapping enchantments, strength, reinforcement, protection, but some of these have decayed over time." Rose traced a symbol with the tip of her finger, feeling the hum of latent power beneath her skin. This wasn't just meant to block entry, it was designed to keep something inside. Eli exhaled sharply. "Fantastic, let's just hope it's not still in there." With that, they began their work. Rose took a measured approach, channeling small, controlled bursts of fire to heat specific rune patterns, disrupting their sequence while Eli used her scanners and tools to counteract the residual magic holding them in place. The first two wards fizzled out, their ancient power unraveling as the two worked in tandem. "So far, so good," Eli muttered, fingers gliding over the screen of her scanner. "I think we're—" A pulse of sickly blue energy surged from a previously dormant rune, lighting up the entire surface of the collapsed wall. Rose's stomach twisted as she saw the ward flicker to life. A protection ward. And it was still active. Before either of them could react, the ward lashed out violently, a blinding arc of magical force crackling through the air. Eli didn't have time to dodge. The energy slammed into her chest like a sledgehammer, lifting her off the ground and hurling her backward down the stairwell. A strangled yell tore from her throat as her body hit the stone steps hard, tumbling downward in a blur of motion. "Eli!" Rose's heart leapt into her throat. The protective ward's energy was still writhing, looking for another target. Rose barely had time to react before it lashed at her next. Instinct took over. With a sharp flick of her wrist, she summoned a flame shield, redirecting the ward's strike just before it could hit her square in the chest. Searing heat illuminated the stairwell as Rose pushed through the lingering energy and lunged after Eli. The technomancer had come to a ragged halt at the bottom of the stairs, groaning as she clutched her ribs. "You with me, Keebler?" Rose asked urgently, kneeling beside her. Eli coughed, groggy. "Well, that sucked." Jewel was already moving, her medical bag unzipped as she dropped to her knees and began checking Eli over. "You just got thrown down a stairwell by an ancient, angry ward. Hold still." Rose kept her flame shield up, warily eyeing the still glowing runes above. "That thing wasn't active before. We must have triggered it when we broke the first two seals." Eli groaned. "Noted. Also, ow." Jewel pressed a hand against Eli's shoulder, focusing her scanning device on her ribs. "You're lucky. Just bruises, no fractures. But that was a hell of a hit. You'll feel it for a while." Rose exhaled slowly, jaw clenched. The ward was still there, still burning with residual magic. The only reason it wasn't attacking again was because she was holding it at bay. But for how long? "Okay," Eli muttered as she sat up, wincing. "So, maybe brute force isn't the way to go." "No kidding." Rose's eyes never left the unstable ward. "We need a new plan. Fast, before that thing decides it wants round two." Eli winced as she pushed herself to sit upright with Jewel's help. "Great. Got any bright ideas? Because I really don't feel like taking another trip down the stairs." Rose's gaze flicked back to the barrier, her mind racing. If brute force wasn't the answer, then they needed to think like the person who placed this here. "Whoever built this didn't just throw up a wall," Rose muttered. "They sealed it, which means there has to be a way to unseal it." Eli gritted her teeth, nodding. "Yeah, well, let's figure it out quick, before I have to start billing you for medical expenses." Jewel smirked as she secured her medical bag. "I'd say hazard pay applies here." Rose exhaled, already moving back toward the stairwell, her flame shield flickering in the dim light. "Let's crack this thing before it cracks us." Rose exhaled, rolling her shoulders as she faced the enchanted wall once more. They had already tripped one nasty ward. She wasn't about to make the same mistake twice. Eli, still wincing from the hit she took, was back on her feet, determined as ever. "All right," she muttered, adjusting her scanner. "If brute force is off the table, we need to work smarter, not harder." "For once, I agree with you," Rose quipped. "So let's figure out how to open this thing without getting fried." Eli tapped at the glowing runes again, watching the energy pulse beneath her fingertips. "This isn't just a protective barrier," she said after a moment. "It's a fail-safe. If someone tries to force it open the wrong way, the entire ward system retaliates." "Yeah, we figured that part out already," Rose deadpanned. "Question is, how do we get past it?" Eli narrowed her eyes, scanning the runes in a slow, methodical manner. "Wards like these usually have a keystone, a focal point that ties the entire enchantment together. If we can disrupt that, the whole thing should unravel." Rose ran a hand through her hair. "So where's the keystone?" Eli squinted at the symbols before stepping back, following the flow of energy through the runes. Her gaze landed on a particular set of glyphs near the base of the collapsed wall. "There. Those symbols are slightly out of sync with the rest of the pattern. If I had to guess, that's where the magic is anchored." Rose cracked her knuckles. "All right. I'll handle the magic part, you just tell me when to stop." Eli gave her a skeptical look but nodded. "Fine. But the second something looks off, you pull back," Rose smirked. "What, you don't trust me? Not even a little?" With a small chuckle, Rose stepped forward, summoning a controlled thread of fire in her palm. Unlike before, she didn't attack the ward directly. Instead, she let the flames dance over the glyphs, testing their reaction. The runes flickered, shifting in response. "Slower," Eli murmured, watching intently. "Let them adjust. Don't force it." Rose kept her movements fluid, the fire tracing the symbols, gently unraveling the enchantment piece by piece. The glow of the ward pulsed erratically, its energy destabilizing. A low vibration rumbled through the stone as the keystone symbols began to break apart. "That's it," Eli breathed. "Keep going. Almost there." Rose gritted her teeth, adjusting her magic carefully. The ward fought back, a final surge of energy crackling through the runes, but she was ready for it. Redirecting the pulse, she let the flames absorb the backlash. The runes fizzled out, their glow fading into nothing. A deep crack echoed through the stairwell, and with a slow, deliberate groan, the enchanted slab shifted, dust and debris cascading down as the weight of the magic holding it in place collapsed in on itself. The wall was no longer sealed. Rose exhaled, stepping back as the last remnants of the ward vanished. "Well, that was fun," Eli huffed. "Define fun." Gunner's voice rang from below. "Is it done?" Rose turned, grinning. "Yeah, it's done. Let's get the hell out of here." She turned back to Eli, giving her a smug look. "See? No explosions." Eli gave her a tired glare. "Shut up, Rose." Jules smirked from the bottom of the stairs. "I hate to break up this touching moment, but are we actually moving? Or are we camping out here?" Rose wiped her hands off on her pants, then nodded toward the now open passage. "Let's go see what's on the other side." The moon hung low in the sky, casting an eerie silver glow over the murk-dust landscape. Lyra and Argoz moved swiftly but cautiously through the rocky terrain, keeping their silhouettes low. It had been 2 days since they left the ruins where they planted the message, and while Black Dawn patrols had dwindled, neither of them dared to let their guard down. Lyra adjusted the strap of her pack, scanning the darkness ahead. "I hate waiting." Argoz snorted. "You hate patience. There's a difference." "Same thing." Lyra shifted her grip on the binoculars slung over her shoulder. "You think they got the message?" Argoz sighed. "If they didn't, we're going to have to get creative." They had been careful, moving only at night, using the terrain to their advantage, and avoiding open ground where possible. But tonight, the air felt different, quieter, more still. The usual distant hum of activity from the fortress had faded, leaving only an unsettling silence in its wake. "I don't like this," Argoz muttered, glancing over her shoulder. "Feels wrong." Lyra felt it too. Something had shifted, and not in their favour. Either they're setting up for something big, or they don't think anyone's out here anymore. They pressed on, covering the final stretch to the portal site. The clearing came into view, bathed in dim moonlight, and for the first time in days, Lyra felt the whisper of hope. If anyone had made it here, there would be signs. Disturbed earth, footprints, anything. Argoz crouched near a cluster of rocks, scanning the ground. No fresh tracks. If they came, it was a while ago. Lyra pulled the comm unit from her belt, flipping it over in her hand. The once glowing indicator light was dark. With a sinking feeling, she held the button down. "Echo Division. This is Lyra. Do you read?" Nothing. She tried again. "Gunner. Rose. Anyone. Do you copy?" More silence. "Damn it," she muttered. She popped the panel open, revealing the drained battery. Dead. Argoz leaned in, peering over her shoulder. "Well, that complicates things." Lyra clenched her jaw. "We wait here until dawn. If no one shows, we find another way to reach them." Argoz sighed and leaned against a rock, keeping her dagger within easy reach. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. The night stretched on, the stars above offering no answers. All they could do now was wait. A faint noise broke the silence. Lyra's head snapped up, eyes narrowing as she strained to hear. It was barely a whisper, a muffled sound coming from somewhere near the rocks, at the edge of the clearing. "Did you hear that?" she murmured. Argoz stiffened, ears twitching. "Yeah. Came from over there." They moved cautiously, stepping lightly as they approached the fallen slabs of stone near the edge of the site. The sound came again, a soft scraping, a shuffle of movement beneath the rubble. Lyra's pulse picked up. The ruins were ancient, abandoned for over a century. There shouldn't be anything alive down there. Argoz raised her Black Dawn rifle, her expression tightening. "That's not wind. And it's not an animal." Lyra slowly unslung her own weapon, keeping her voice low. "Could be a burrowing creature. Could be something else." The noise came again, more distinct this time. A rhythmic scraping, then silence. Both of them instinctively took cover, positioning themselves behind scattered rocks and fallen debris. Lyra flicked her rifle's safety off, her eyes locked on the rubble. Minutes passed, nothing moved. Then, a deep groaning shift of stone. A tremor rippled through the ground as dust trickled from between the cracks. Argoz shot Lyra a look. "That's coming from underneath." Lyra's grip on her rifle tightened. "Something's trying to get out." The two remained still, watching, waiting. If it was an enemy, they'd take the shot. If it was something worse, well, they'd deal with that when it came. Another shift, another scrape. Then a muffled noise, almost like a cry, distant and distorted. Lyra's breath caught. It wasn't a growl. It wasn't an animal. It was a voice. Argoz's ears flicked toward the sound. "Did you hear that?" Lyra swallowed. "Yeah, but I couldn't make it out." Another sound, faint but sharper this time, followed by a dull thud. Something or someone was moving beneath the rubble. Argoz shifted uncomfortably. "You think it's—" Lyra's mind raced. If it was a voice, it meant something human was down there. But how? This place had been abandoned for over a century. She exhaled, keeping her rifle raised. "We hold position. We don't move until we know exactly what we're dealing with." They listened as the noises grew louder, still unclear, still buried deep. But there was no mistaking it now. Something was alive beneath them, and it was trying to get out. The ruins fell into silence again, the tension stretching unbearably between them. 20 minutes passed, the quiet pressing in like a weight. Then a sudden burst of light erupted from the cracks in the stone, faint at first, then stronger, pulsing with unnatural energy. Lyra and Argoz flinched back instinctively, their rifles trained on the glowing rock. The light flickered, intensifying, before a sharp, splitting sound echoed through the clearing. The stone cracked open. Dust and debris rushed outward, rolling through the air in thick clouds. A low rumble followed as the rubble shifted, parted, then collapsed inward. The entrance, whatever it was open. Argoz adjusted her grip on her rifle. Well, that's new. Lyra kept her weapon raised, eyes narrowed. Stay ready. We don't know what's coming through. The dust slowly began to settle, but they weren't moving an inch. They were not going to be caught off guard. A deep, ominous crack echoed through the underground chamber. Eli's head snapped up as fine dust rained down from the ceiling, catching the glow of the lanterns. The rune-marked slab at the top of the stairwell, once solid and unmovable, was now splintering. Rose didn't hesitate. "Move!" she barked, grabbing Eli's arm and yanking her back down the stairs. The first chunk of stone broke free, smashing onto the steps where they had stood just moments before. More fractures raced across the enchanted slab, splitting like veins of lightning. A deep groan rumbled through the stairwell as the weight of centuries finally gave way. By the time they reached the bottom landing, a deafening crash roared above them. Dust and debris billowed into the tunnel, swallowing the light and filling the air with choking grit. Coughing, Eli turned, her eyes wide. "That was too damn close," Rose cut in, brushing off a layer of dust. "Everyone okay?" The engineers had scrambled back, some shielding their heads from the falling debris. Clara had Omega on edge, his hackles raised. Gunnar remained still, scanning the collapse with a sharp, assessing gaze. The dust began to settle. Silence followed, thick and uneasy. "Status?" Gunnar's voice cut through the tension like a blade. One of the engineers coughed before stepping forward, flashlight in hand. "Checking now, sir." Eli pulled out her scanner, running a quick assessment. The readings were erratic at first, but then stabilized. The structure's still intact. The walls held. No further collapses detected. The engineer nodded, cautiously stepping forward. "Looks like we lost the top of the stairwell, but the passage itself didn't cave in. We should still be able to get out." Rose exhaled, tension still coiled in her shoulders. "Well, that's something." Gunnar's gaze lingered on the ruins above them, his mind already working through their next move. "All right," he said finally, turning toward Shade and Katrina. "You two are up. Move out and check the area. Make sure it's clear." Shade gave a quick nod, adjusting his gear. Katrina rolled her shoulders, her expression set in determination. They exchanged a glance before stepping toward the exit, weapons at the ready. The stairwell was treacherous, filled with uneven rubble. Shade climbed first, his movements swift and deliberate, testing each step before shifting his weight. Katrina followed close behind, both of them keeping their senses sharp. Behind them, the engineers wasted no time getting to work, assessing the best way to clear the debris. The air was thick with dust, every movement sending small stones tumbling down the steps. As Shade neared the top, something caught his eye, a flicker of moonlight reflecting off metal just beyond the exit. He froze. "Hold up," he murmured, lifting a hand to stop Katrina. He narrowed his gaze, adjusting his angle. A rifle. Someone was out there. Katrina tensed, her hand already shifting toward her blade. "How many?" Shade kept his voice low. "Just one that I can see. But if there's one, there's more." Katrina nodded, silent understanding passing between them. Hostiles weren't an option. Not now. They needed the element of surprise. Without another word, both of them melted into the darkness, activating their shadow walk. Their forms disappeared into the gloom, silent as wraiths, slipping through the shadows of the broken stairwell and into the ruins above. Beyond the rubble, Argoz and Lyra lay low, rifles trained on the exit, tense and waiting. Neither of them saw what was coming. Shade and Katrina materialized behind them in an instant, weapons drawn, poised for a swift takedown. Lyra's sharp instincts flared just before impact. She felt the shift in the shadows, the unnatural movement that signaled something or someone closing in. Too late. She barely had time to react before cold steel pressed lightly against the back of her neck. Katrina's voice was calm, almost amused. "Drop it." Argoz stiffened as Shade appeared at her flank, gun raised. "You move, you die." For a heartbeat, no one breathed. The tension was razor-thin, ready to snap at the slightest wrong move. Then Shade exhaled sharply, recognizing Lyra's profile. His stance eased just a fraction. Well, that's awkward. Lyra's grip on her rifle tightened, eyes flicking toward him with slow recognition. Then, without missing a beat, she scoffed. "If you wanted to flirt, you could have just said hi." Shade smirked. "Was trying to be polite. Guess I'll just shove you next time." Katrina rolled her eyes, stepping back and lowering her weapon. "You two done?" Argoz muttered something under her breath, lowering her gun but not quite relaxing. "Damn it, you scared the hell out of us." Lyra exhaled, finally letting the tension slip away. "Same. What the hell are you guys doing here?" Shade's grin remained, but his eyes flicked toward the ruins behind them. "Funny. We were about to ask you the same thing." The dust swirled between them, but the fight was over. They weren't enemies. They were allies. For the first time in days, the teams had reunited. Shade tapped his comm, his voice crackling over the channel. "Gunner, you there?" Gunner's reply was immediate. "Go." "Garage is cleared. We're on our way back inside. And we've got company." A pause. Then Gunner's voice sharp and assessing. "Define company." Shade glanced at Lyra and Argoz before replying. "Two strays. You'll want to see this." The group made their way down the passage, stepping carefully through the recently cleared debris. The engineers were still securing the space, reinforcing the stone supports. Chlora and Omega were posted near the entrance, the massive wolf's golden eyes flicking toward the newcomers with quiet scrutiny. Inside the chamber, Rose was at the control console, her fingers idly drumming against the metal surface as she monitored the portal readings. She barely acknowledged the approaching footsteps until a familiar voice cut through the air. "Hey, boss. Miss me?" Argoz. Rose turned sharply, her gaze landing on the goblin standing beside her. Number not just her, Lyra. For a moment Rose said nothing, just letting the weight of recognition settle. The air between them stretched tight. Lyra held her gaze, unreadable but composed. The room stilled, then Rose exhaled, her lips curling into something between amusement and disbelief. "Miss you? Number expecting you to find trouble?" "Absolutely." Argoz grinned. "Well, you know me. Trouble's my middle name." Lyra's smirk was small but present. "Good to see you too, Rose." Rose gave her a long look before responding. "Yeah, suppose it is." Gunner stepped forward, arms crossed. "Someone want to explain how the hell you two ended up here?" Shade answered first. "Found 'em outside the ruins, staking out the place. They weren't expecting us, and we weren't expecting them. Thought they were hostiles at first. Almost got ugly." "Almost," Argoz muttered. "You shadow-crawling bastards scared the hell out of us." Shade smirked. "You'll live." Lyra nodded. "We've been moving at night, staying out of sight, Black Dawn's pulling back. We saw them consolidate near the fortress, but they aren't spread out like before. Something's shifting." That got Gunner's full attention. He glanced at Rose, then back at Lyra. "Keep talking." Lyra folded her arms. "We were heading to the portal site to see if anyone had come through. Then we heard movement under the rubble. Didn't know who it was. Turns out it was you lot." Argoz chimed in. "Oh, and Lyra's comm unit is fried. Dead battery. Otherwise, we might have checked in sooner." Rose rolled her eyes. "Of course it is." Eli, who had been quiet up until now, finally stepped forward, scanning both of them. "You two look like hell." Lyra smirked. "Thanks, Keebler." Eli gave her a dry look but didn't argue. Gunnar exhaled sharply. All right, we debrief in 10. Get cleaned up, get food if you need it. Then we figure out our next move. He turned to Clara. Make sure the elves secure the exit. Last thing we need is an uninvited guest. Clara nodded. On it. Lyra and Rose exchanged one last glance before parting ways. Whatever history lingered between them, neither was about to unpack it here. Not yet. Eli stepped forward, pulling a compact device from her belt. She tapped a few commands and a shimmering holographic field materialized, covering the entry. To the untrained eye, it now appeared as though the passage had been sealed just as before. That should keep wandering eyes away, Eli muttered, inspecting her work. Meanwhile, the elven guards moved into position, securing the perimeter with practiced efficiency. Their sharp eyes scanned the surroundings, ensuring that no threats lingered in the shadows. The engineers, now satisfied with the stabilization, began packing up their gear. Tools clanked softly as they secured their equipment, the tension in the room finally starting to ease, if only slightly. Gunnar gave a final nod. All right. We regroup in 10. Darren leaned against the nearest stone wall, watching as the engineers gathered in the corner, speaking in hushed tones. He knew that look. Soldiers talking when something wasn't sitting right. And after a week of clearing battlefields, something had clearly clicked for them. His eyes narrowed as the CSM stepped away from the group, walking toward him with purpose. Darren pushed off the wall, arms crossing over his chest. Something I should know about? The CSM didn't waste time. We're staying. Darren blinked, then scoffed. The hell you are! Behind the CSM, the other engineers turned, standing tall. Their silence spoke volumes. You don't get a say in this, CSM, Darren continued. Your mission was cleanup, not joining the fight. You're getting reassigned as soon as the next transport. With all due respect, the CSM cut him off. That's not your call. Darren felt his jaw tighten. I'm not losing civilians. We're not civilians. The CSM's voice was firm, unwavering. Every single one of these men and women have done multiple tours in Iraq and Afghanistan. We've built, fought, and rebuilt again. And we've seen what's out there. We've been clearing battlefields, Darren. You think we don't know a war zone when we see one? Darren exhaled sharply, trying to keep his irritation in check. This isn't your fight. Is Earth in danger? The CSM asked. Darren hesitated. The CSM pressed. Is our home at risk? Darren sighed, rubbing the bridge of his nose before finally muttering, Yeah. That was all it took. The CSM squared his shoulders. Then we're in. Every single one of us swore an oath to defend our country, but more than that, we defend home. We're not walking away. Darren glanced at the engineers behind him. Their faces were set, determined. This wasn't a negotiation. He let out a slow breath, shaking his head. Gunnar's gonna love this. And if you're staying, that means you're under his command now. The CSM smirked. Then I guess we work for him now. Darren chuckled despite himself. Fine. But if you're staying, you're getting briefed. The engineers nodded, already turning to prep their gear. The decision was made. They were in the fight now. Darren ran a hand down his face as he made his way toward Gunnar's position. He knew this conversation wasn't going to be easy. Hell, convincing Gunnar of anything usually required some sort of tactical finesse, or sheer stubbornness. And right now, Darren didn't have the patience for finesse. Gunnar stood near the command console, arms crossed as he reviewed reports from the engineer's excavation efforts. His cybernetic arm flexed slightly as he scrolled through the data, his remaining eye narrowing in thought. He looked up the second Darren approached, already sensing that something was coming. You look like you've got bad news, Gunnar muttered, his voice edged with suspicion. Darren let out a breath. Depends on how you look at it. Gunnar arched a brow. That's so. Darren crossed his arms. The engineers are staying. Gunnar blinked, then exhaled sharply. Excuse me? They're staying, Darren repeated. They've seen the battlefields. They know this isn't just some classified dig site. They're all combat vets, Gunnar. Iraq, Afghanistan, Multiple tours. And they know a war zone when they see one. Gunner's expression darkened, his jaw tightening. I never asked them to stay. This isn't their fight. Darren's smirk was dry. Yeah? Well, you didn't ask me to stay either, but here I am. And you know what else? They swore an oath to defend their home, and Earth is their home. Gunner rubbed his temple, exhaling slowly. They're engineers, Darren, not infantry. I don't need unnecessary casualties. They're combat engineers. That means they know how to work under fire, build defenses and blow obstacles to hell when needed. You think Black Dawn's going to sit back and let us do our thing? We're going to need fortifications. We're going to need controlled demolitions. We're going to need people who can keep the ground stable while we work. Gunner didn't reply immediately. His gaze flicked past Darren, toward the engineers still checking their gear in the distance. He knew Darren wasn't wrong. The battlefield was shifting, and they needed all the help they could get. But bringing in more people meant more lives on the line, and Gunner had seen enough loss. Darren seemed to pick up on his hesitation. He took a step closer. Look, I get it. You want to protect people. But these guys, they don't need protecting. They need a leader who knows how to use them right. You let them walk, and that's manpower we can't replace. Gunner was silent for a long moment. Then, finally, he let out a slow, measured breath. You really believe they're ready for this? Darren nodded. I do. Gunner's lips pressed into a firm line before he finally gave a curt nod. Then they'd better be ready to work. I don't have time for hesitation or mistakes. They fall in, they follow orders. No exceptions. Darren grinned. Oh, you'll love 'em. They're real good at following orders. Gunner shot him a glare. Get them in line, Darren. We deploy soon. Darren gave a mock salute. Aye, aye, boss. As he turned to walk away, Gunner exhaled slowly, watching the engineers in the distance. He still wasn't sure if this was the right call, but at this point they needed all the help they could get. And if Darren was vouching for them, that was enough for now. The battle was coming whether they were ready or not. Gunner pressed a button on his comm. Desera, Operation Payback is in motion. Prepare to deploy assets in 3 hours. But first, get Bianca and her drones here ASAP. We need recon coverage now. Desera's voice crackled back. Understood. I'll have her there within the hour. Gunner turned to Eli, who was already eyeing him with an expectant look. What's the status on enchanted weapons for the engineers? Eli smirked. Lucky for you, I've got enough M4s to equip them. Enchanted rounds included. They'll have the firepower they need. Gunner nodded. Good. Make sure they're armed and ready. We don't have time to waste. Eli crossed her arms. I'll make sure they're good to go. Just try not to break anything before we get there. Gunner exhaled, steeling himself. The pieces were falling into place, but this was just the beginning. The real fight was still ahead. The preparations unfolded quickly. Bianca arrived first, stepping through the portal with a hard look in her eyes, carrying the drones in a case, small but lethal, scanning the surroundings before she even spoke. I'll have eyes over the entire area in 15 minutes. You want stealth recon or intimidation? Stealth first, Gunner responded. If they don't know we're watching, we keep the upper hand. Bianca gave a sharp nod and immediately set to work, unpacking and setting up the control station. Not long after, the elven artisans arrived with the shipment of enchanted M4s. Clara took inventory while Eli inspected the weapons. Each rifle shimmered faintly, runes glowing along the barrels as she checked their enchantments. She gave a satisfied nod. These will do. The engineers will have no excuse now. The engineers lined up, receiving their weapons with a mix of curiosity and silent respect. They weren't mages, but they knew how to handle a firearm. One tested the weight of the rifle before muttering, "Feels solid. Not like any M4 I've handled before." "Because it's better," Eli said simply, moving down the line to ensure everything was distributed properly. Meanwhile, Jules set up a medical triage area near the portal. She worked quickly, laying out supplies with the precision of someone who had done this too many times before. As she adjusted one of the medical stretchers, the CSM approached. "I've got 2 combat lifesavers with my team," he told her. "They're trained for battlefield care. They're yours if you need 'em." Jewel glanced at him before giving a nod. "Good. I'll get them up to speed on the setup. If this goes south, we'll need all the hands we can get." The CSM motioned for his men to step forward. "You heard her. Get to work." As supplies rolled in and final preparations took shape, Gunnar surveyed the camp. The pieces were in place. The forces were set. It was time to move. He exhaled sharply, knowing full well that this was the calm before the storm. "We deploy in 3 hours. Get ready. This fight isn't waiting for us." Bianca knelt beside the portable console, her fingers dancing across the holographic interface as her drones hovered in stealth mode high above the battlefield. The Recon feeds flickered to life, sending real-time data into her visor, marking troop positions and defensive measures spread throughout Black Dawn's fortress perimeter. Each camera angle told the same story: fortifications, overlapping patrol routes, and a lot of well-armed bastards. "This place is a damn fortress," Bianca muttered, zooming in on one of the listening observation posts LPOPs concealed within the ruins. Well-placed, minimal movement, camouflaged into the terrain. Black Dawn had learned a thing or two about hiding in plain sight. A low whistle came from her right. "That's some impressive tech you've got there," one of the engineers muttered. Staff Sergeant Riggs, the CSM's designated drone specialist, leaned in closer. A seasoned combat engineer with multiple tours under his belt, Riggs was no stranger to tactical reconnaissance. "You running them in full passive mode?" Bianca smirked. "You think I'd let them ping us? These babies are ghosts. 0 emissions, running on thermal and motion tracking. No chance in hell they're picking us up." Riggs nodded approvingly, his eyes flicking to the various data points appearing on their tactical overlay map. "Got a cluster of LP/OP sites positioned along the west approach. Looks like Black Dawn is expecting something from that direction," Bianca murmured, tagging the positions on the digital battlefield map. "Another one covering the rear. Minimal movement, but it's got a clear line of sight to the entire valley." She expanded the recon field, pushing the drones farther out while keeping them below enemy sensor thresholds. Riggs let out a slow breath. "Damn. This is some next-level security. They're dug in deep." Bianca's expression darkened. "Yeah, and we're about to rip them right out." She keyed her comm. "Gunnar, you're going to want to see this." The tension in the air was thick as the battlefield map flickered across the war table inside their forward command post. Gunnar, Clara, Eli, and Darren all leaned in, eyes scanning the new data. "They've got 4 confirmed LPOPS, covering every viable approach," Bianca briefed. "No major troop movements yet, but those positions are hard to crack without setting off alarms." Gunnar exhaled sharply. "So much for sneaking in quietly." Darren chuckled. "Did you really think we'd get lucky this time?" Clara folded her arms. "If we don't take out those LPOPs first, we won't make it within 100 yards before they call for reinforcements." Bianca nodded. "Agreed. We take them out. We cripple their eyes. I've marked them all on the tactical map." She tapped the console, and the LPOPS pulsed red on the hologrid. "The question is, how do we want to deal with them?" Gunnar's gaze swept the table. The time for planning was over. Now they had decisions to make. Gunnar's gaze flicked toward the trio standing off to the side, Lyra, Shade, and Katrina. He didn't need to say much. "You 3 are up," he said, tapping the LPOP markers on the map. 4 sites, 3 Black Dawn operatives per post. Eliminate them quietly, no alarms, no bodies left in the open. If they get a signal out, this whole thing is shot before we even start." Lyra smirked. "Stealth is what we do." Shade gave a slow nod. "We'll get it done." Katrina studied the map for a moment, tracing a finger along the approach routes. "We'll need synchronized takedowns. Black Dawn might not be expecting us, but they're disciplined. One guy goes silent and the other 2 will know something's off." Bianca adjusted the drone feeds, zooming in on the posts. I can give you movement patterns and timing gaps. They rotate every 20 minutes. You'll have a window between shift changes where they're at their most vulnerable. Gunner's tone remained steady. Work in pairs for each target. Katrina, you and Shade take the first LPOP on the ridge. Tight quarters, but it's got the best line of sight into the valley. Lyra, you move solo on the second. Deep cover post near the ruins. Take your time, make it clean. Once you're done, regroup and take the last two together. Darren leaned back, arms crossed. So let me get this straight. We're sending the shadow-walking infiltrator, the elven assassin, and the most ruthless close-quarters specialist we've got to make three-man teams disappear. He let out a low chuckle. Yeah, this isn't even fair. Clara shot him a look. The point is for them to not even know it's happening. Gunner ignored the banter, shifting his focus back to the team. You all move as soon as I give the order. Keep your comms on a closed loop. Radio silence unless absolutely necessary. Once the LPOPs are clear, we move in. The three operatives exchanged glances, nodding in agreement. The mission was set. The hunt was about to begin. While the strike team prepared to move, Gunner turned to the CSM and Eli. We need a mobile command center in the bunker. I want this set up before the first shot is fired. The CSM gave a sharp nod. Understood. I'll take 2 of my guys and set up a C2 station. We've got supply drops inbound, so we'll establish a secure logistics hub alongside it. Eli was already moving, running a quick diagnostic on the incoming gear. I'll go over the equipment with you. Everything's enchanted to run on a closed circuit, so no outside interference. I'll also need to distribute comms to everyone, including the engineers. The CSM turned to his assigned men. All right, let's get moving. Ammo storage here, medkits staged near triage, and command set up in the back. Eli quickly ran through the operational instructions, showing the CSM and his men how to cycle the encrypted communication lines and interface with their battlefield uplinks. Once set up, they would be able to relay data between Recon teams, strike forces, and command in real time. As the mobile command center solidified, Clara and her elves moved back out into the field, pushing toward familiar terrain. This was the same location Echo Division had worked out of before, and Clara knew the lay of the land better than most. Her team spread out in disciplined formations, slipping through the ruins like shadows. They moved silently, avoiding open spaces and ensuring no Black Dawn patrols could detect them. We're setting up our own LPOPs, Clara radioed in. 2 elves and 1 of our engineers at each site. We'll have eyes on all movement zones. Each LP/OP was strategically placed to maximize line of sight and minimize exposure. Elevated positions in the ruins gave the teams clear vantage points, and natural concealment ensured they remained undetected. The elves and engineers worked efficiently, setting up observation perches, sensor nodes, and camouflaged nests. One engineer activated a passive motion sensor at one of the higher vantage points. No unnecessary risks, no surprises. Black Dawn's watching the main paths, Clara murmured, scanning the valley through her scope. But they're not watching the ghosts in the dark. She marked the final perimeter placements on the tactical map, ensuring every approach was covered. If Black Dawn moved, Echo Division would see them first. Meanwhile, the engineers set to work reinforcing and preparing breaching points at key fortifications. They moved with precision, their experience in demolition and fortification clear as they placed controlled breaching charges at structural weak points. At the entry point to the underground bunker, engineers carefully positioned claymore mines to cover their retreat, ensuring a failsafe in case of pursuit. These mines were concealed, their triggers set to activate remotely if Black Dawn attempted to follow them into the tunnels. Eli worked alongside them, double-checking the charges and incorporating enchanted fuses that would ensure a precise detonation sequence. The CSM oversaw the placements, nodding approvingly. Controlled destruction. We bring down what we need, when we need it. Nothing more. In addition to the charges, the engineers also laid barriers and fallback points, preparing defensible positions should they need to hold their ground. If we get pinned down, one engineer noted, we have these fallback points set. We hold, push back, and collapse the tunnels behind us if it comes to it. Gunner inspected the final setup, arms crossed. I don't plan on retreating, but if we do... We make sure they don't follow, the CSM finished, his tone firm. With the breaching charges ready, defensive positions established, and tactical retreat measures in place, Phase 1 was nearing completion. The battlefield was set. Now it was time to start the hunt.